and welcome to Happy You Asked, the podcast where we explore a little thing called happiness, one awkward conversation at a time. And I am Erin Clare, your host and fellow traveler on this crazy journey called life. And I'm joined today by author Mary Grimm. Mary taught creative writing, 20th century literature, and comics for many years at Case Western Reserve University. She has 3 books of fiction published: Left to Themselves, Transubstantiation, and Stealing Time. Her stories have appeared in the New Yorker, Antioch Review, and the Mississippi Review, as well as in a number of journals that publish flash fiction, including Helen, the Citron Review, and Tiferet. I hope I said that right. Tiferet. Currently, she is working on a series of climate change novellas set in past and future Cleveland. And full disclosure, Mary was one of my creative writing professors a goodly number of years ago when I was an undergraduate student at Case Western. And it's so wonderful to be able to talk to her again. Welcome to Happy You Asked, Mary. Absolutely wonderful that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I start off the same with everybody. Mary Grimm, what is your definition of happiness?
Yeah, that's hard for me because I don't know if you remember this about me as a teacher, but I'm not so big on defining things, I think that I experience happiness, but often I experience it and then later realize that, oh, yeah, that was happiness. So sometimes I think happiness is recollection for me when I remember something. And I think, oh, yes, I was happy then. But when I am happy, I think I'm existing in this, I don't know, kind of undefined and unexamined state where I'm happy, but I don't think about it.
That's interesting. Can you describe some moments when even later you're just like, I was happy then? Did that happen?
I can, yeah, because I was thinking about this. This is something that happened a long time ago, but every time I think about this, it makes me happy. So I was happy then, but also the memory makes me happy. And that was when my 2 daughters were teenagers, and one of them had bought a Van Halen album, which I think was called 1984, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
And we used to play it very loud on our record player, an artifact from the past. Although I understand now people are into vinyl.
Oh, yeah, it's back.
So we used to play 1984, and when, I don't know, do you remember Jump? Jump?
I do, yes.
When Jump came on, we would dance to it, but also whenever Van Halen sang Jump, we would jump, in our dining room. And because this is a very old house, it would make the floor shake, and it would make the china in the cabinet, ring. And it was this transcendent experience, transcended. So I was
I love
happy
that.
again. I was happy. And every time I think about it, it reminds me of that happiness, and I'm happy all over again.
I used to do with the kids, and they were little, we would have dance parties at night. We might just be fed up with work or whatever, and we'd just be like, get some mood lighting, like we're just gonna dance, especially when they were like toddlerish and they're totally into that. Now they would never, but um, and it was wonderful. Those moments of just freedom, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Jump.
Do you think that your concept of happiness has changed over your life at all?
I think probably yes. I think that when I was younger, maybe even much younger, I thought of happiness as something that I had to achieve, or that I had to. I'm talking about post childhood, because I had a very happy childhood, and again, it was unexamined. It was just like it was happening, and I was happy, but did not think about it. But later on, teens, 20s, I thought about happiness as something that I had to, I don't know, be good enough for, or to achieve certain things, and then I would be happy, like just as a for instance, because I'm a writer, that I would have, my writing published in a magazine, or I would have a book published, and I thought then I will be happy. But yeah, that's not the way it works.
So how does it work then? If that's not that goal, how does it work?
Well, if I can just talk about in respect of writing,
Yeah.
which is narrow but applies, I think. Now, I've had books published, and I've had stories published, and I realized, I think not quickly, but eventually, that it was not the publication or the recognition that made me happy in respect to writing. What actually made me happy was writing itself.
Mm.
I really like writing. A day when I don't write is to some degree a day like wasted, or like not the optimum day that it could be. But if I have written on a day, that day is like solid. That day is, I can put it away in my, I don't know, if I had a happiness box, I would put it in my happiness box. So I'm really much more now about process as something that makes me happy rather than achievement.
And that's a theme that keeps coming up with different people I talk to on this podcast is, you know, their success, those sort of mountaintops are almost letdowns because,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, they want them, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't give like the bliss, it seems to people. It's trying to find it in the actual work that we love, in the day to day. That doesn't mean that day to day is perfect, but that the process of doing what we love and building things is really where the happiness resides. So it seems that that's something similar you're saying there.
Yes, yes, it definitely is. The the state that you're in, which I don't know, some people call flow, when you're doing, it doesn't have to be writing. I mean, it could be other things, but when you're doing the thing, and you're not, criticizing yourself or analyzing, you're just doing it. And that is a kind of happiness. It's very satisfying.
Yeah. My son, who is a jazz piano player, we didn't craft him that way. That's who he is. And so if he's not playing, he's happiest when he's playing, right? And it doesn't matter. It matters less performing, just that he's playing and not thinking so much. And
Mhm.
I see that too. Um, and lots of people, especially creators, that they're doing the thing that really they feel is they were born to do or must to do, I guess.
Yeah,
Do you think?
I have a cousin who quilts, and she says the
Mhm.
same thing happens when she is quilting. And she says it tends to happen after the quilt is put together. I guess, you sort of like piece it out and you have a pattern and all that, which she finds a little anxiety producing. But she said once she's actually sewing, she enters that state and is happy.
I love that. Do you think in your writing itself, do you ever think about happiness when you're crafting a story? How does that play in?
You mean like the happiness of the characters, or?
Yeah, or the message or whatever.
I never think about the message. Well, I should take that back because, as you mentioned in my bio, I'm writing some climate change novellas. And of course, if you're writing climate change fiction, cli-fi, or whatever people want to call it, there's a message from the get-go, because it's about climate change and it's about what is happening in our world. But I honestly mostly, maybe almost never, think about message or theme. Um, my brain just does not work that way, I guess. I think about, the people in the stories, and I think about the places. I really love writing about places that are interesting to me or that have like some kind of emotional resonance. And I think about words, I think about what people say, and I think about, I don't know, all the juicy details, but I just don't think very much about, what does this story mean? I don't think about that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's probably best. As they say, once we give it, then it's no longer ours anymore. In some ways, becomes the world's. So, if how how do you go about crafting then a story? Like what from what's the spark that it leads to a story for you?
Mm. Well, I think it's pretty different, and I could give you, I guess, maybe a couple of examples. Like, I wrote a story, I think 3 years ago, which regrettably, because I think it's a really, really good story, I have not yet managed to persuade anybody to publish, which is about Mary Shelley. And I did not intend to write Mary Shelley, and certainly did not intend to write something that was like historical fiction. But I read, I don't know, like an article maybe or something. I don't remember the original thing, but it was about Mary Shelley. And the thing that struck me in this story was about how many of her children died. Um, many of them as babies. And as a mother, this was very striking to me. And it was something I hadn't known about her before. I'm not sure why. And so I went into this like storm or spiral or I don't know, hurricane of um, Googling and reading stuff. I read so much stuff online, and I reread Frankenstein, and I read a biography of Mary Shelley. And then because I got fixated on the the time when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, which was in 1816. 1816 was, maybe like, was the year without a summer. There had been a volcanic eruption in the Pacific. I've forgotten what island it was. And although they didn't know it at the time, it made the weather. It was cold. It snowed in July, and so on. So that Mary Shelley and her husband, or maybe they weren't married then, and Byron and a couple of other people were in Geneva um, at this villa. And, they famously sat down one night and decided that they would all write a ghost story or a supernatural story. And Mary Shelley started writing Frankenstein. And so after I had done all of this reading and looked at pictures of the villa and read, the vampire story that Byron's doctor wrote, all this stuff, so much stuff, which was kind of fun. I wrote a story that was about Mary Shelley, and mostly that is kind of an unusual way for a story to happen for me. But on the other hand, sometimes I get this like bug in my head, and that is what I hope is going to happen with this menopause story. And I don't really know what's going to happen yet, except I don't know. I have like a voice that I've written some stuff, in the voice of this narrator, but I don't know, it can't just be her talking about menopause. So something has to happen. And so far I have not figured out yet what that's going to be. So I'm sort of like feeling my way. And I think this is true for other writers sometimes as well, that sometimes the writing itself, just, the physical act of writing helps you figure out what your story is or where it's going. So I'm hoping that that is what will happen this time.
That's fascinating. To think about how the writing it, but through the act of writing, the story reveals itself to you in some ways. I like that. Could be maybe like we were talking about just before, that my hair is turning curly with menopause, curlier and curlier and curlier. And it's like I'm transforming into this, is it my crone era? I guess I'm
Yeah, the crone
transforming.
era. Yes, it's
Yes.
good.
And so I don't know. I guess I'm supposed to have curly hair during my crone era, which the good thing is about being one's crone era is you're like whatever. I don't care if it's curly, it's curly. Who cares? I'm over caring that, but I love that. I can't wait to see where it actually goes.
Mhm.
Since this time in my life where I am perpetually either grumpy or hot. It's one of the two things. See how to represent that. Yeah, or sleepy, sleepy too.
I also did a lot of shopping when I was in menopause.
Mm, What'd
You
you
know,
buy?
it almost was like it didn't matter. I would go to like Target and just like sweep through the housewares, and buy like cushions and lemon squeezers and I don't even know what.
No, I feel I that's one thing about back and forth to Boston. Then I have like two places. I'm like, well, I gotta furnish this one nicely.
Aw,
Shopping is something actually too. I just go to a lot of concerts. I think that's a form of shopping. Yeah,
music shopping. Yeah.
that's exactly right. Now, do you think, what role do you think, if you have it all, like suffering or hardship or those like negative emotions play with happiness?
Mm, well, they're not good for happiness. No. Um, as everyone, especially everyone who, has attained my somewhat advanced age, bad things have happened. I've lost people. Um, and, I think when you're like in the deepest part of that loss and grief, happiness is there. There's still like minor happiness can still happen, you know.
Mhm.
You know, and maybe even there's this, I don't know, survival instinct that makes you seek things out, you know, that are going to mitigate that grief and that loss. So I lost my husband, my second husband, when I was 32. And, you know, when you lose your parents, which I have also lost my parents, it's not that that was like fun and games, but you're somewhat prepared. You know, your parents are old and eventually they're going to die. But when you're 32, you know, you're not expecting that at all. Um, so I was, you know, laid low, gobsmacked, you know, by this. But at the same time, you know, when I look back, I can remember there were little pieces, you know, where I was happy and maybe even sought out happiness, you know, like, you know, going to the beach on a day when I was supposed to work, you know, sorry,
Mhm.
former boss, you know, um, with a friend. And I was happy for the space of the time that we were there, even though it was like the loss and the grief were still there. And maybe they were waiting until I got home, you know.
Mhm.
But while I was at the beach or, you know, while I was doing something else, you know, where I was searching for relief, I guess, I was happy, you know, in maybe a minor way.
Yeah, and almost as that exists simultaneously, like when you have sunshine and clouds at the same time in
Mhm.
the sky. That it doesn't have to be an either or. That you can see happiness, but the clouds are still there.
Yes, yes, that's nice.
I like that too. I just came up with that crap right then. I
Nice.
felt it was poetic, right? Yeah, I still got a little bit
You
of
should be like writing that down. And, you know, as a writer, I always feel like write it down, you're going to forget it.
it. I will just
Because,
forget it. I've just accepted. I will forget that at this moment. What was the thing I said? It sounded really wise. Oh, it's gone. Yeah. Now, do you think that as a culture we've gotten happier or less happy?
oh, that's such a terrible question.
I asked the easy ones here.
I don't know. I mean, maybe if I was a certain sort of person on the political spectrum, maybe I would find this to be a happy time,
Mm.
but I'm not. Um, so I don't know. I sort of feel if I was just going to talk about America, I don't feel that America is very happy now, even if um, you are a Republican. Um,
Mhm.
you know, everything is in flux. A lot of bad things are going on, not only in America, but in other places. I mean, I'm just like bracing myself to hear that there's going to be another war in some new place, you know, besides all the ones that are going on now. So I don't know. I mean, there is this, there is this consensus sometimes. I feel like that things used to be happier, that we as a country or as a culture used to be happier, and I don't, you know, that's probably not true. I mean, maybe it was true for some people,
Mm.
but I certainly don't think we're happier now. No, I do not. I don't.
Well, and statistics that measure such thing because there's a there's a happiness index internationally, and we don't rank particularly high in
Uh,
developed nations, as you can imagine, because it's based on things like people's how much hope they have, how much potential they have, are their basic needs met, things like that. That are the conditions for happiness, and we don't do a great job at that overall.
so
So we're usually not ranked terribly high. So that your inkling brings out with the research, the data at least. Do you think social media or technology has made this any worse or played at all, or would it have happened anyway without those things?
well, I think it might have happened anyway, but the fact that, you know, one feels a need to take a news vacation um, says that yes, social media has made people more aware, you know, of, and of course, in some ways that's good, you know, to be more aware. But you know, you're also aware that at the time, you know, that we're sitting here and talking, people are dying and people are starving, you know, and we cannot not know that. And of course, we shouldn't not know that. right? So yeah, I think social media definitely plays a part in how we feel about the world and what is happening.
So, um, not it hasn't been too long that you retired from teaching, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that shift, or as far as like personally, does it for happiness, all of it?
Well, it was like sort of tough at first, and I was not forcibly retired or anything, but as sometimes happens in universities, there was a buyout, and I forget, I was 72 maybe or something like that. And so I was expecting that I would retire pretty soon, and it seemed kind of dumb, not to take the buyout, right? So I did. And it was hard to adjust at first. I have actually worked at some job or other since I was like, 16. And I was used to supporting myself, for a lot of those years. And I just felt really kind of like, well, now what, and
Hmm.
people would say to me, well, this is so great for you because you'll have all this time for writing. Um, but I have discovered that I have a certain amount of writing in me, and I might be able to stretch that a little bit if I'm not working another job, but not that much. I cannot write 8 hours a day. I know there are people who can, but not me. So it took me a while to get used to it, and but I did eventually. And now I think I'm adjusted to it, and I'm pretty happy about it, I think. But I really still miss teaching. Teaching is something that made me very happy.
Yeah. What do
I,
you miss about it?
um, I would actually feel, I would get psyched up before I went into the classroom, and it was a little like being high, and I loved, the back and forth with my students, seeing what they would come up with, the weird things they would say, the interactions in the classroom, talking to students one on one. Of course, there were things I hated. I hated grading, and I hated
Grading.
meetings. Hated meetings.
Hmm.
But all of the interactions I had with students were so great, and I loved that, and it made me really happy, and I miss that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's speaking to my soul. Same, very similar. I mean, as administrator, I don't get to teach, and I miss that, but I hate grading. But I miss the part where just you see like a student get something, or they just say something so unexpected, and it can be so
Yes.
hilarious. Like I have spit my water out, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like they have said the funniest things that stick with you for decades. And just watching them grow and us grow together in the class
Mm-hmm.
is beautiful. I found though, I mean, I can have some similar stuff in other circumstances. It's really about communicating with people that are open.
Mm-hmm.
And in a classroom, they're paying for that experience, so they're more open. But it can be recreated in other places. But yeah, teaching is it it's something that when it's gone, or a real teacher that it it's hard to replace it. So what do you do? How do you spend your time?
Well, I actually do some teaching. There's a Cleveland organization called the Lit, a literary organization, and they have classes. So I've taught, I think, maybe 4 classes for them. I taught a feminist reading class on feminist fiction of the 60s and 70s,
Mm.
which was so great. And I've taught climate fiction twice. And I think I've taught another one too, but I don't remember what the other one was. And those are really fun. I really like that. And I do not have to grade anything.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, that's
Um,
best.
there's reading, there's commenting, but there is no grading and there are no meetings.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like excellent.
yeah,
So
that's the best.
I've really, really liked doing that. And I do, of course, write. Um, and I would say probably I spend, you know, I aim at spending about maybe like 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours a day writing or doing writing related things. And actually today I did not write text. I did writing related things, which was looking at old stuff and also trying to clean up my files, which are really a big mess on the computer. Um, and I garden in the summer. Gardening is a big thing for me. I love gardening.
And going for walks too,
And I
right?
go for walks. Yeah. I usually go for a walk every day unless the weather is really horrendous. So,
Yeah, and so I imagine then that's one of your practices for maintaining your happiness.
yeah, it makes a big difference. I I I go to different places, but there's one place that I go to the most, which is one of the Cleveland Metro Parks. And as soon as there's a bridge there's a parking lot, then there's a bridge, and then you can either take the path, which is the asphalt path, and which I have to do if it has been raining, if it's muddy. But if it's not, then I go directly into the woods. And as soon as I entered that space, I can feel my affect, altering, I feel lighter. I feel expansive. I feel happy.
Yeah. There's so much research about that, like being out in nature, just how much that affects your brain chemistry, even if it's just a short amount of time, 5 minutes. But
Mhm,
especially being out in the woods, right? That's why there's all these things like forest bathing and stuff
mhm,
like that, because then it's a full surround, all senses involved. And that really can shift our mood quite a bit. I mean, if we can double down and be grumpy and still do that, but if
mhm.
we're not doubling down, then um, that being out in the woods and nature on paths like that really do wonders for us.
Yeah, I love that term, forest bathing, because that's what it's like. It's like this immersion. It's like you just go into the green. It's great.
Yes. Yes. And so then we open up in the sort of bathing in terms of like noticing the color and the light and the air temperature, and we begin to notice a lot more. So it is like bathing our senses and all the
Mhm.
forest has to offer. Doesn't mean we have to be walking around naked. I mean, to each their own, but it's not my business to walk around naked. But one doesn't have to forest bathe. You just got to be in the thing and pay
Yep.
attention. Awesome. So I'm thinking about then, what are some things you do when you aren't happy? I know you walk, you write, but what are some other intentional practices you have to help maintain?
One thing I do is I talk to my sister, although actually I talk to my sister pretty much every day,
Mm,
but sometimes, it's just for fun and like to exchange news. And sometimes it's therapeutic, I think, for
yeah,
both of us. Um, so that's one of my coping techniques. And also, this is something that we remind each other of, is I'm unhappy today, but tomorrow it's like a clean slate. Tomorrow things are going to be better, and mostly they are,
mhm,
because often unhappiness or depression, not always, but and maybe I should leave out depression because that's like what it's a medical state, right? So
mhm,
unhappiness is um, often or can be temporary. You feel this way now, but it's not going to last.
yeah,
Um, but also reading always makes me happier, and maybe the kind of reading I might do if I was in a bad mood would be not, getting the new groundbreaking book by some important author, which I would be ready to tackle, when I was in a good mood, but it might be something more like rereading something that I had really liked, or reading about gardening or nature, um, which I don't know, I really like that.
yeah,
It's one of the reasons why I really like John McPhee, because he writes a lot about nature and about geology and the ecology, and I find reading he's an amazing writer, but also I find what he writes about to be like very soothing,
yeah.
and happy making. You know,
For me, that's Mary Oliver. She writes about
oh
nature,
yeah,
but
Mary Oliver. Hmm.
it's one of my feel goods. Like I need to soothe. So it'll be maybe a little Mary Oliver, maybe some Louisa May Alcott. Come along, Little Women, or some Jane Eyre. So they're the ones that feel like home, like
Hmm.
a like comfort. Yeah, I turn to those as well when I need
But
that.
I also might read Stephen King, which
Mhm.
improves my mood in a different way, because things are so bad in Stephen King's world. Like I just finished his newest book, which I think is called Never Flinch, and I don't really like that title at all. And I not too long ago read something that's going to be turned into a movie or a series, which I think is called The Institute. And
Mm.
it's like, it's so awful, the Institute, maybe in particular, which is about this. The Institute is a place that, oppresses and tortures and, uses these teenagers who have, powers. And it's so horrible, that, my life looks better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, things could be worse. Thanks,
Could
Stephen
be
King.
worse. I could be psychic and being kept in a cellar, so.
My cat could come back.
Mhm. Oh my
As like
God,
Pet
Pet
Cemetery. Oh,
Cemetery.
that's awful.
I would never ever read Pet Cemetery again. That was so, that
That
was
was
that was like
awful. Yeah.
beyond awful. Mm.
Yeah, that one's really bad. But I think that I do some of the similar things. Like Stephen King's a good one because it's not going to happen per se. I mean, it's a metaphor, but it's like, this is terrible. Thank you, Stephen King. I love that about him.
Thank you for going to this place for me, Stephen King.
Yeah,
So I can
so
have catharsis.
I can have, context for
Hmm.
my feelings right now. Oh, it's all much better. Yeah, that's one of the great things about literature, and films don't do it the same way for me. Like to really change my mood, reading will shift it far more dramatically, because the all of the sensory experiences inside that you have to create for that world as you read that I can ignore while I'm watching a movie. It doesn't. It's not as immersive, I guess. Do you
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah, I tend to, not when I'm in the theater, but when I'm watching a movie at home, I tend to do something else at the same time. And I don't do that when I'm reading, obviously.
no? Because it's really hard.
It would be really hard to do that. Yeah, actually, this summer, I'm almost done with this, which I really regret. But I reread all of Georgette Heyer's Regency romances.
Ooh.
I'm a big fan of Georgette Heyer, and I've read some of them several times, but this summer I read all of them. And it was just so great. I don't know. You're probably, I don't know, maybe you don't read romance or Regency romance, but
No, no, I haven't for a while. I did when I was younger, and I would love to get back to it.
Georgette Heyer is the queen. She is the queen. Yes.
Awesome. I love it. I love a good romance too. I love doing things like that for myself because it's a way to spend time that really is by reading something that I love just for me that just feels beautifully, wonderfully indulgent in the best way.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to read next, do you think?
Um, I just got a book by Jill Lepore, which I've forgotten the name of, but it's like, she writes a lot. She's a New Yorker writer, and she writes a lot about history.
Mm.
And I think it's called These Truths. And it's about, suppose it's about American history, and supposedly it's going to inform me about how we got to where we are now. So that'll be maybe a little heavy. So I'm going to be reading that, and I just ordered it from the library, and I have a couple of books by friends who just had books published. One is like a science fiction kind of galactic adventure, with robots by
I love it.
and Marie Vibert, who is a case alum.
Oh.
Yeah, and her book is, I'll give her a plug. It's called Andre and the Hellcats.
Mm.
Um, and she was in the 90s, but I don't know if you guys overlapped, but she was one of my
What was her last name?
Vibert, Vibbert.
I don't think so.
And she was in my creative writing classes in the 90s. So I'm going to read that. And I have a poet friend, Jeff Gundy, who had a book came out, and also um, Mary Bittinger, who teaches at the University of Akron. She just had a book of, I think it was public. It's like being called a flash novella, I think. So a
Mm.
series of flash fictions called The Girl with the Black Lipstick, which I just got and I haven't started reading yet.
That's fun.
Hmm.
I have one final question. It's my favorite one that I ask. What is one of your favorite songs? And this will go on a playlist. Uh,
Just one of my favorite songs.
you can pick two if you
Okay.
need to.
It's really hard to pick one, but I will tell you the one that's been on my mind lately, which is a favorite song, but it's on my mind because Ozzy Osbourne just died, is Crazy Train.
Yes.
I love Crazy Train. I just love
Yes.
Crazy Train so much. And then the one that I would put next to that is Somebody to Love.
Ah,
Queen.
just
I'm a big Freddie Mercury fan.
I love it. Those are perfect choices, and they're going to make the playlist even happier. You
Two
can't beat some
great
Crazy Train.
students. Hmm.
Mary Grimm, it's made me so happy to talk with you.
It has made
And
me happy as well. So, I can put this on my happiness quotient. We're doing a
yeah, that's right.
happiness podcast with Erin Claire. Wait, I have to say one more thing.
Sure, of course.
You probably have thought this as well, but one of the things that makes me happy is when my former students are doing so well and wonderfully, and you are one of those students. I'm so
Aw.
pleased with, how you've turned out. I think it's just so great.
Well, thank you for helping to shape me because you helped me to see that there's so many different ways to see the world, and they're valid. You just have to make sure that you show all the details and be open to what
Hmm.
other people have to
Hmm.
see. And that really shaped me because now I just have to be open to other people's perspectives and it makes life easier.
It does.
So thank you for that lesson. It's helped change my life. So look, you, I'm here because of you and a bunch of other people like you who showed me great things. And all I did was keep them.
Well, I have to say that you were, I don't know, as a student, so impressive to me because you just had this like drive, and you then were much more serious, at least in class, than you were now. I mean, it was always this look on your face, like I am taking in everything, everything I will turn, to my use. I'm using it all. I'm taking it all in. That's how I thought of
Oh,
you as a student.
oh yeah. Well, I really was driven. And
Mhm.
the cool thing is I did it. I did the things I set out to do, which
You did. It's so great.
yeah. So then I can be happy, right? I
Mhm.
did the things. And so now I just get to show other people what I've been taught all these years by people
Yeah.
like you. And so hopefully they'll come on and take it and it'll just be your legacy forever and ever.
I like it. That's
Yeah.
good.
Well, thank you everybody for listening and thank you so much to Professor Mary Grimm. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for teaching all of us through your writing and we look forward to reading your next work.
Thank you for having
Bye.
me.
All right, till next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.